Welcome back to the Tydirium Hangar, and happy Friday, everybody. Today I want to talk to you about selling tips. And I mostly talk about buying, but I think I need to talk about selling. These are some tips that you probably did not think about, and this is a pretty good time of year to start selling some of your stuff for a few reasons that I'll point out as we go on. But this doesn't have to just do with collectibles or high-end collectibles. It could be pretty much anything, your purse, handbags, or high-end collectibles, or sneakers, or whatever. But I'm going to give you these tips. Maybe you didn't think about them, and most of my viewers actually do more buying of stuff and less selling of stuff. So hopefully this is informative and helpful. We'll talk about it all coming up. Alright, so whether you're selling one item, a few items, or an entire collection, hopefully these tips are going to be helpful for you. And if you sell just a little bit, but not a lot, then these tips will definitely be helpful for you. And if you sell a lot, you might be able to give me some tips. So getting into my first tip, I want to say that you want to take a look at what you're selling, and if you possibly might want to buy back in the future, don't sell it. So that's my first tip is don't sell it if it's something that you might want again. Now obviously everybody's situation is different, and there's a lot of reasons why people sell stuff, sell their collections, sell certain items. So I like to point out this contact shot here because maybe they won't make this again. Maybe if down the road you want to buy it back, it's going to be twice what you sold it for, and I can see that as being a problem. Same thing with other items like Bad Cube. Bad Cube might not make their Warpath again. So if you get rid of your Bad Cube Warpath, maybe you can't reacquire it without spending a lot more money on that. There's certain things like that taken into consideration, but for me personally, I suffered from Fans Toys Soar. No, I didn't have a Soar from Fans Toys. It's their version of Swoop. I sold this one off after I ended up getting the Gigapower one because I liked it, and for whatever reason I've been wanting to get it back, but with the reissue prices even higher than I sold this for, I just decided to pass, and I've just kind of let that feeling go. And, you know, you might have to do the same thing too, but always consider this going forward. Okay, so next up, you have to have realistic pricing. And also, I'm going to say there's a bit of a conversation about sunk cost that we're going to be talking about. So I'm still going to be using the contact shot because I think it's a very good example. And the other examples I use I think are extreme examples, so I'm going to utilize those also. So looking at this on the very left, you see two contact shots, and yes, that's all that's available. And I've had people in the comments tell me how excited they are when they could get their hands on one of these because they don't come up very often. And there's two up right now. Then you look to the right there, those are sold ones. So they seem to be living in between, somewhere between about $250 and about $385 sold, depending on whether they're sealed brand new or they're used or they don't have a box, or if they do have a box. In this case, having a box is actually very, very helpful. But looking over on the left, there are some available for sale as low as $289.99, and so I think that's a pretty good price. So living around the $300 mark is pretty good. What if years from now they're living in the $600 mark? I mean, who knows? But I think right around $300 is a very, very fair price for this. So you have to take into account something called sunk cost. If a sunk cost is what you spent on the item, and it could be, in some cases, in many cases, a lot of collectors bought the Dakka Toys Chronos as $400. I use this figure a lot because it's an extreme example in quality control, extreme example in secondary market pricing volatility, meaning that it came out at $160, the price went up to $400 or more, people paid $400 and more for almost a year, and then Fans Toys came out with their Phoenix, dropped this price down to $60. And sometimes these sell for $150, and sometimes they don't even sell for $60. Let's have a look at this. So here are the most recent sold Dakka Toys Chronos on eBay. And yes, we're going to talk a lot about eBay because they are the biggest marketplace for secondary market items. And that's why I like to use eBay. But we'll talk about a few of the other ones coming up. So looking at this right here, you see that we had a $60 one with 12 shipping that didn't sell. Mint in sealed box, so it's brand new. It didn't sell, but pre-owned, but sealed box. Okay, whatever. Then there's one for $150, and it didn't sell. And then one sold for $50, and one sold for $90. And of course, plus shipping. And those shippings are like pretty high too, $35 and $31. Pricing's all over the place. But you're not getting $400 out of this guy, and you're probably not even getting $100 or $150. You're getting barely $60 if you're lucky. So pricing him between $60 and $100 is probably realistic. I got mine for $60, so that's why I kind of think about this one. And yet, some people paid $400 back in the day. So the next thing I want to talk about, selling tips you probably didn't think about. Well, you might actually have thought about this one. Don't sell a KO as an original. If you have a KO item, then you need to sell the KO as a KO. Now, there's a couple of things about this because eBay can delist your listing if you put K and O in it. And yes, you're going to see a lot of listings say KO and don't get delisted, and yours might because someone might spitefully turn you in for KO, and that's how yours gets taken down. Now, the thing about this is, though, there are cool ways to say it. You can say it's an unofficial version, and then make sure you say not original. You can also say fourth party, which is the new KO term. The new cool kids are using the KO fourth party instead of KO. But with that, if you ever try to represent a knockoff and sell it as official, you're going to get in a lot of trouble, especially when your buyer finds out. So just don't even do it. I like to buy a lot of KOs, and if I go to sell them, I know there's not much of a high value market for secondary market KOs. A lot of people are okay with spending, half the price to get them new, but then they want to get it even less than that if they're buying someone's used KO. There are some exceptions to that rule. There's exceptions to every single rule. But when you think about this, it's not worth having to pay shipping to your buyer and shipping back because eBay will force you to take it back. It's not worth getting kicked out of groups for selling, misrepresenting your products. It's not worth all of that, all of the trouble, all the hassle, the negative feedbacks. So never ever sell a KO as official. And something else. The next topic is something you might not have thought about. The 3 scariest letters in the English alphabet, I-R-S. So a chill went up my spine. I probably went up yours too, just hearing those letters. So here's the thing about this. The IRS is a very powerful entity, part of the U.S. government, and you just don't want to get on the bad side. This is one area where I think it's actually kind of nice of them, although they're trying to change this, but how they've set the limits and they've drawn a line between a hobbyist or a small business. That line we'll talk about in a second, but they're ramping up with 25% more funding to the IRS this upcoming year. So let's be careful, and I'll show you how to save yourself. I'll show you how to save yourself from yourself, I guess you could say. Okay, so the line is drawn at $20,000 in gross payments and 200 payment transactions. So if you exceed $20,000 in gross payments and 200 payment transactions at the same time, then whatever institution that is processing your payments, eBay or PayPal or Cash App, that's a little, I don't know about Cash App, or if Mercari is processing your payments, or if you're using Square or any of those that process your payments, which is probably going to be eBay. In our case is here, if you exceed that 20,000 and you exceed the 200 transactions. Now, they show you on your seller dashboard. You can find that real easy. But I want to tell you that the gross payments are deceptive. There's a few things in there I really want to touch on real fast before we move on. But the one thing that really struck me as odd is that they add in sales tax collected on your behalf. So if you sell an item in a state that your buyer has to pay sales tax, then they're going to add that to your 1099-K. I couldn't believe that they did that, but you need to look into that because it happened to me once, and I just don't ever want it to happen again. So it's kind of crazy. And also looking at this, you're going to have your seller fees, which for eBay, it's on average 14. It can be down to 12 and a half and a little bit more than 14 because now they process payments. And you're also going to have shipping costs, and they also do charge their fee on your shipping costs. So there's a lot of things to look at, and just stay under that 20K, and we'll talk about some more coming up. Okay, so one of the things that if you're trying to sell or you're thinking about selling right now, it's a really good idea to sell right now because you can sell a whole bunch during the holiday season, and you definitely won't hit your 20,000, or a big chance you won't sell 220,000 in a month if you haven't been selling all year. And then you can kind of split up whatever you're selling between now and next year. Next year, we're actually going to run into some other problems because we're going to have a really light tax year. Tax return year is going to be the lightest tax return year in a long time because of the forward advanced child tax payments that's been going on and those kinds of things. There's a lot of stuff to take into account, a lot of stuff to think about, and a lot of stuff to understand when you go to selling your stuff. So eBay is the largest secondary market in the world, and it is international, it is worldwide, and so all that, we're going to get into more of that here in a second. But when you look at alternatives, Facebook groups, and pretty much any other way you can communicate, Facebook, Instagram, I don't know if people do that kind of stuff on Twitter, I don't go on Twitter, but you find yourself a buyer, and you usually process it through one of these other, like maybe PayPal is what you do, a PayPal transaction or something. So Couple things about Facebook. Number one, if you're using Facebook or any of these other social medias, you need to protect your identity. So it's a little bit hard to kind of put yourself out there on Facebook when you're selling and all this kind of stuff. But protect your identity. Be careful who you're giving your information to. Be careful not to give too much information out and all that kind of stuff. And you don't want anyone to hack your accounts and all this kind of stuff. And you just want to protect yourself and be safe. If you're meeting up in person, you also want to protect yourself and be safe. All of that kind of stuff. So I want to put all that out there. When you're selling, you're putting yourself out there. You're putting information out there. And you've got to be conscious of who is receptive to this. So protect your identity first thing first. Second of that, never use friends and family. So if you're selling on Facebook and you request friends and family to a buyer, you look kind of suspect. You certainly do. Use goods and services, and here's the reason why. First off, PayPal opens it up to let you ship for a massive discount. And also with that, it just doesn't seem like an honest seller if they force you to do friends and family through PayPal. The thing about this is that now you are being charged a fee as a buyer to use friends and family. It used to be free, interchange all you want. So that is an issue. That is an issue. So do not use friends and family. It makes you look very suspect, very suspicious, and someone's gonna have to eat the cost. You're the seller needs to eat these costs. So next tip you didn't think about is international shipping. And if you limit yourself to the country you're in, then you limit yourself to probably about 16% of the world. Now, there are collectors in every country, and pretty much every country, almost every country is accessible through eBay's global shipping program. Now, if you're going to sell internationally, suggest the eBay global shipping program for the simple fact that they are very, very good. I mean, I don't know what they do different than just using standard delivery, standard traditional delivery methods, but I have had very little trouble with eBay and shipping internationally. And I have to tell you that I'm very, very thankful to my friends in other countries that help me acquire stuff. It is really hard to get stuff from other countries that weren't released in the US because a lot of people don't want to ship international because they're scared. They're afraid that once it leaves the country that they're going to get scammed. And I understand that fear, but if you ship through eBay, eBay covers you. Once it gets to their shipping center, they have it 100% covered. Unless you shipped the wrong item or you shipped an item that was damaged or you didn't describe it very well. If you shipped it right and described it well, then you'll be good. So if you sell internationally, you need to know about exchange rates. And I got to tell you that PayPal charges the highest fees on exchange rates. Trading dollars for pounds or euros, swapping those out. I don't know because I do everything through PayPal and it is very expensive, but it is covered in a way. And so I just kind of leave it at that. Now, if you use eBay directly for it, it may be a better value for you. But trying to look at it and calculate it, I calculated exactly how it should be, and it's always way more because PayPal adds additional conversion rate to you. So with all of that, it's just something else you have to understand. It's usually a buyer that has to deal with this and not a seller. So you want to sell in your own denomination, but you might find more buyers if you're selling something in a certain market that takes US dollars more than any other currency. If you price it in US dollars, you might actually sell more. These sellers, I've seen them do it, and they do very, very well with that one little trick. So the next point you didn't think about are buyer scammers, how buyers scam sellers on eBay, and this happens all the time. There's articles. This article came from turbofuture.com. There's lots of articles about this. There's videos on YouTube talking about buyer scammers, and for the most part, you can protect yourself by following these very few simple steps that I'm going to discuss here real fast. First of all, when you sell something, you have to describe it well. And it's almost like instead of the selling points, you're wanting to identify everything that's wrong with it or anything that could possibly be a problem with it. But you really want information that you want to know as a buyer yourself. So you want to put all that stuff in there. Number two, you want to pack this thing very well. You want to get it packed extremely well. A couple of tips. I like to slightly oversize the box and then put a little extra stuffing in there. That's something that's a pro tip right there for you. If you pack it well, then you can avoid any issues in the future. I've seen some people literally throw something in a box and it just slam around in it and show up broken into 100 pieces. And then wonder, what? It broke? How did it break? No. Everything has to be wrapped in something. It doesn't have to be bubble wrap. It could be tissue paper or a lot of paper, newspaper. I've seen people use a lot of stuff, a lot of really creative ways to get almost free shipping materials and all that kind of stuff. But you need to pack it really well so that you have good peace of mind. And buyer scammers can't come back on you. And another thing, you need to have good communication. Now, these days, this transaction is going to be done online. You're not going to be talking to them on a rotary phone like this, but it's kind of fun to look at an old rotary phone for anyway. Looking at this, you will be way better off if somebody tries to scam you and they try to hit you with some sort of problem that's fake and you address it right away immediately. You immediately jump on it. The longer you wait, the worse it is for you as the seller, and eBay doesn't always side with the buyers. If you've done everything right, eBay will more than likely take care of you if you've done everything right. You have proof of everything, you've got your shipping, your tracking's uploaded and all that kind of stuff, then you shouldn't have to worry about this, but you definitely need to stay on top of that communication. Don't avoid if somebody says there's a problem. Jump on that problem as soon as you see that email so that you can resolve the issue and move on. And my last pro tip here for you that you probably didn't really think about, if you're trying to hold on to some of your extra stuff that you want to sell and you're thinking, well, it'll be worth more tomorrow, in a year, or 6 months, or 8 months down the road. The future, we don't know. We just don't know about the future. It could go down in value. It could lose value greatly. There could be something else that comes out that makes your item worth way less, just like Dakatoys Chronos and all that kind of stuff. So thinking about this, what is the future value of the stuff that you have to sell today? Well, we know the market, the current market climate and conditions today. We don't know them a year from now, 5 years from now, and a decade from now. And we don't even know if collecting is still going to be a thing 20 years from now. So all this stuff, I'll still be collecting 20 years from now, don't worry about it. But I just want to put that out there as my last tip you might not have thought about. So let me know what you think about this video, and was it helpful for you? Are any of these tips in here something new that you've never heard? Are you thinking about selling some of your extra stuff that's just laying around? Because I think a lot of us are. And have you been selling for a while? Do you have some pro tips for me? Because I'd like to hear them in the comments below. Like and subscribe. And Titanium, hang around.